Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is David Talbot. I'm Managing Director and Head of Research here at Red Cloud Securities, and I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on uranium today. We are going to hear from F3 Uranium President and Director Ray Ashley. Now, during today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook. Then we will take your questions. We'll get to as many questions as we can. You can type them into the chat box. Now, before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this F3 webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I direct listeners to the forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of the company's presentation. That can be found on the corporate website, f3uranium.com. For Red Cloud Securities, I'd highlight this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. So please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on F3 uranium. Now, with that, I now turn it over to Ray to update the audience on the company.
Thank you kindly, Dave. Thanks for having me. Look, I think I'd like to just get right down to the summary of the work that's been done, especially last year, and really talk to you about our winter program that's underway and what we're aiming to try and achieve with the winter program. So here's an overview of the property, actually 3 properties. So it's the PLN property and Minto to the north and Broach to the south. You can see the JR zone labeled. When I put my mouse pointer, do people see that? Anyway, the JR zone is there labeled. The new discovery that we made at the end of 2022, high-grade uranium zone. And as you can see, Paladin's triple R, and the next-gen Arrow deposit are shown there on the map. And so our new JR zone discovery is located about 25 kilometers to the northwest of triple R and Arrow. So in the right neck of the woods where the next major development of uranium mines in the Athabasca Basin will be located. So a zoom up of the actual PLN project. So the 3 properties that make it up, you can see there, Minto, Broach, and PLN. You see the JR zone at the very north end of what we call the A1 and B1 shear zones. They're about 5 kilometers in length, with the JR zone high-grade mineralized zone at the very north end of that A1-B1 system. We commenced drilling to kick that off not too long ago, and I'll explain that after I go first over what was really the main things that we achieved during the 2024 program. So the JR zone first, there it is at the north end of the A1 shear zone. It's about 156 meters in strike length. And, some of the highlighted intersects are shown there, very high grade. And those are mostly true thickness. One of the real significant holes was drilled in December 2024, and that's hole 176. Hole 176 was really in an area where we weren't expecting. We were infilling the zone, and we were surprised by the tenor of that hole: 4.5 meters of 50% within 7.5 meters of 30% uranium. What that really showed us is the JR zone lens is a flatline lens, but that hole has led us to understand that there's high-grade chutes that plunge within the flat-lying lens. And so one of the things that we're aiming to do based on intersecting that hole 176 is to try and add volume around that hole And as well, we've been looking through all of the drill holes that we have to see if there could be other chutes like that, which stand to add, increase the zone. So that's one of the things we're concentrating on, based on that really significant hole. So this is what it looks like, hole 176, and you can see the dark black mineralization. That's the 4.5 meters of 50%. So really a very significant hole, and holes like that add quite a lot of pounds, especially if we can define a volume around them. And that's one of the things that infill drilling, one of the three things really that we're aiming to try and do at the JR zone. At the project this winter. So just a quick cross section to give an idea of where this lens sits. So it's, the purple is the basement rocks. And so it's just close to the top of the basement, but it's a basement hosted lens that intersect, that's colored there. That's hole 176. So it was really a high grade hole in above a hole that was really not, it wasn't expected, and it's really helped us to understand the possibility for these plunging chutes. So you can see the sandstone above the zone. The JR lens is about 60 meters thick. Above that, there's 120 meters of sand and gravel. That's the quaternary, and that's about 120 meters thick. So the zone itself, the lens, is about 200 shallow, just over 200 meters below the surface. So there it is. In 2024, we drilled just shy of 23,000 meters and 50 drill holes. Many of those were in the JR zone to infill and expand that zone. But as well, we were aggressively exploring along the A1 and B1 shear zones. So this is about 3 kilometers south of the JR zone lens itself on A1, B1. And some of the significant things from the 2024 drilling were that this B1 shear zone was extended by almost doubled in size, extended by 700 meters. We recognized that the A1 shear zone actually did cut across this major Harrison fault. So there's a very significant cross-cutting structure that you can see there, where the sandstone is a couple of 100 meters thick on the south side. So it's all down dropped. Great structural disruption. So our drilling showed that this A1 shear zone extended beyond that cross structure. So there it is, stacked shear zone. So A1 is there south of the Harrison fault, which we didn't know previously. So now the A1 and B1 shear zones are stacked. That's a positive feature. We see in hole 152, really, we've talked about it before. That hole 152 had anomalous uranium, all the right alteration. And really what it looks like is a near miss to high grade mineralization. So down here near this cross fault, the splay is another thing that was discovered. The splay off the A1 shear zone, you see that fork. So there's multiple shear zones near a major offsetting structure. Hole 93 had 10,000 parts per million boron. The only place we see in the lower sandstone, the only place where we see that is immediately above the JR zone lens. So down here, 3 kilometers south of the JR zone lens itself, we're seeing all the right signs for proximal high grade. Now, what happens here is that a lot of the drilling was down here, and a lot of the assays and the geochemistry that we're awaiting, that's outstanding from the laboratory, about 25 holes are still outstanding. And that geochemistry will help us to target at A1 and B1 down here. So really, we did start by drilling a follow-up hole to hole 152 this winter, just because it was such a hole that looked so outstanding. We will be trying to await more of the geochemistry from the laboratory before we head back, but we will this winter, but later in the program to head back and target back around A1, southern part of A1 and at B1 here where the shear zones are stacked, to try and find the high grade lens that really all the signs are there to tell us that we're close to one. So that's one of the features where we definitely are still going to concentrate our exploration this winter. So there it is. The winter drilling's underway. So at the Jarrah Zone itself, we will be trying to define these high-grade shoots within the lens, plunging shoots within the lens to, add pounds to this resource, to the zone. Prior to completing an independent resource estimate, we want to try and get these high-grade shoots and volumes. Then exploration down here at where A1 and B1 are and the cross fault. And as well, geophysics is underway on the Minto property and the Broach property. And this winter, we are trying to define a new conductive system parallel to A1, B1 down here on the Broach property. The ground geophysics commenced early in the winter. We suspected that there was a conductor down here parallel to A1, B1. Historically, there was geophysics done, but no recognition of a conductor. And now the geophysics that we've done shows that there is, in fact, a parallel conductor here, as we had suspected. So here it is. Jarrah Zone infill drilling, A1, B1 exploration. But as I said, we want to really get after PW next. The geophysics isn't completed, but we've already modeled the geophysics done so far, and we see a conductor there. So we're really already in a position to head down there and get our first drill hole into this PW system. We think it's a conductor system, and we're going to get our first look at it. And really, that will tell us a lot. We knew from early drilling in 2014 at A1 that conductor, that shear zone, had the right look to host high grade. And that's why we kept at that. In 2019, we went back, and eventually in 2022 found the Jarrah Zone lens. So really just the first drill hole, or the first few drill holes into this new conductor, which we interpret to be a new conductive system, shear zone system, will tell us its prospectivity for mineralization. Then up here, the other trend that we have recognized from modern airborne MT that was flown last summer is this A4 trend. There, the ground geophysics also shows that there is a conductor, which was thought previously to be two short little things, now an 8-kilometer long conductor system. And again, the ground geophysics started this winter confirms that there is a conductor where previously we hadn't recognized one. So that's going to be ready for testing. We've found that this can actually be drilled in the summer. So we will concentrate on PW on those places where access needs frozen ground. PW so we will start on PW. A4 is something certainly in this year, in 2025, we'll be testing the A4 trend, the PW trend, and this new Broach Lake conductor. So a reinterpretation of this EM that we did led us to recognizing a new steeply dipping conductor here at Broach Lake. That is on a regional trend that where there's historically been interesting results. So we're quite excited about this new conductor that we've managed to interpret, steeply dipping, something that we also mean to test in 2025. So yeah, we're well funded. There's the winter program will be smaller than last year, something like $5 million. It's a $5 million budget. But certainly we'll be able to achieve the three things that I've laid out, the drilling at JR. We'll test PW for the first time and get our look at if in fact this looks like a new system. And then we'll manage to get back and drill at where the Harrison Fault and A1, B1 are, where we see all the signs of nearby high-grade mineralization. And we hope to have a lot more of the geochemistry that's outstanding from last year in hand to help target down at A1, B1. So really, that's the summary of where we're at, and the winter program that we're excited to have underway.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Ray. A very informative presentation. We now will start with the Q&A portion of this webinar. Reminder to everyone on the line, you can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can. So, Ray, to start off, what was it about the southwest Athabasca Basin that really attracted you to the area? Obviously, this is the area where the original fission where you made your RRR discovery pretty soon after starting work in the area. But what is it that you like about the southwest Athabasca?
Well, you mean before the first RRR discovery? You're meaning, David, in the first?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's keeping you there? Because you're still there.
Look, we weren't afraid to go into that side of the basin, despite common knowledge at the time saying everybody needed to focus on the east side of the basin, that really Clough Lake was a one-off. And we weren't afraid to go looking there. And that's all about looking at the historic data, right? And recognizing that all the right signs were there. All of the signatures that are present on the east side, there's a lot of assessment reports, historic work that was done. And in fact, one of the guys that was my mentor, when I'm a geophysicist, that guy wrote a report. There was a lot of work done down in that part of the basin. And when I read that and his comparison of the conductors that were seen in the east, and it wasn't just us. We were working with Alpha at the time. And there was radon anomalies, all kinds of things that told us, and from the historic work, that there was no reason why the West shouldn't be host. All the signs were there. So we weren't convinced by this argument that only discoveries can be made on the east. So that's how it started. And then we just applied, we're lucky to have been in this exploration game for a long time. And we applied new technologies, new ideas, like this low-level aircraft discovered the boulder field. That's what started it. This beautiful boulder field, 5 kilometers by half a kilometer with 125 high-grade boulders. That then made it clear that there was a discovery to be made, that there had to be high-grade uranium at the top of the basement somewhere up ice. We got all the people we worked with before and managed to hone in on and discover the first lens at RRR fairly quickly. And then we just kept at it and applied, the knowledge we have from exploring for a long time, and really from the discovery we started on the east at the J zone, this team, and, discovered and grew that zone. And then whatever, we weren't afraid. It's like not just going with common knowledge, but looking at things objectively and not being afraid. So, okay, once we made the discovery of the first lens at RRR, we just kept exploring, and then, found 5 separate lenses over 3.3 kilometers, and they're different depths, and they are not shaped the same way, and they're of different sizes. So being exposed to all of this exploration, well, look, and then Arrow gets discovered. And now these are huge deposits. So, we were right to be looking down there, and huge deposits were made. And once that's the case, it's pretty clear that that's elephant country. Mm-hmm. So that all the right fluids are flowing there with all the right processes to precipitate these super large, ultra high grade deposits. So then that's a great neck of the woods to be looking. And we had the PLN property way back when. That's, fission uranium, FCU spun that into F3. So, but it's a property that we'd held for a very long time. And then it was a joint venture with Alpha at the time. And we'd worked on that all the time while we were growing the Triple R deposit, we continued to do work up at PLN and saw all great similarities to the way the rocks look, to the way the alteration is. And in fact, the JR zone lens is really the best analog to it is 840 West at Triple R. So yeah, we were successful at finding, a lot of uranium at Paladin's Triple R. And when we were exploring at PLN at the same time, Dave, we just saw similarities to tell us that the potential was there. And we just didn't give up, and management heard us, and we kept going back when we saw positive signs and finally discovered the JR zone lens. And now we really see more prospective signs for high-grade mineralization at, A1, B1, at B1 and the Harrison Fault than right around the JR lens itself. So yeah, that's why we like it. It's elephant country, and right on our PLN property, we see the signs that, there's really high-grade mineralization nearby. It's about us being able to find it. These deposits are hard to find. They're high grade. They're quite small. And, Sam says it, you don't have to be, a drill hole can just miss it, can be a near miss. And it's hard to recognize that. So they're really difficult things to discover. And luckily, I work with a team of scientists that have been around 3 of these things now.
Yeah, no, that discovery takes me back. I recall writing about that boulder field probably 3 or 4 times before the discovery was actually made. So there's a question here: how much infrastructure is on the west side of the basin? And probably even a better question is, how much do you expect to be on the west side of the basin here shortly?
Yeah, look, I think it's the southwest Athabasca with Paladin's Triple R and Arrow, and they both are in the process of trying to in the same time frame build mines there. It's called the area where the development of large uranium development in Canada. That's the place where that's going to happen next. They're huge deposits, they're very profitable, and mines are going to be built there. Saskatchewan is a jurisdiction where there already are big mines, so it's pretty clear that there's going to be the development of a big mine there and a mill. Like both Paladin and Arrow talk about having an independent mill. I think there'll be one ultimately, but there will be a mill there. There'll be mines there. And what we've discovered is just 25 kilometers away. Mm-hmm. So what we've found certainly is not enough to be a standalone mine at this point. The one lens we found, if there's other lenses, who knows? We're aggressively exploring to try and find them, and we see signs of them. But there will be mines developed 25 kilometers away from where we've made our discovery. And ultimately, if we didn't, that at the very least, the lens we found would likely be high graded. 25 kilometers is not far, and it would be processed in the mill that's going to be built there, likely in the near term.
Right. Okay. So your JR zone, we're talking about high grade core for sure, 156 meters long in strike. How long do you anticipate the infill drilling to continue? Because, recently you've been very successful at finding these higher grade shoots. And like you said, 50% over 4.5 meters. That's huge. That's one of the best intercepts in the basin. So, how long do you keep, infill drilling this?
Well, look, my guess is not a whole lot longer. Okay, to answer your question directly, we've found, based on that hole you described, we have all this in 3D. We've looked at where these possible high grade shoots might be. Plunging shoots are. We've drilled it very closely now. The zone, because we're aiming for, when we do a resource estimate, that it'll be indicated, and that's what we've aimed to do. So, it's something like, it's not a lot more holes, David, like maybe 10 or 12 more holes, pending, what it comes out of it. But it's that kind of thing where there's still drilling to be done. And I'm just throwing that out there, something like 12 to 15 holes will allow us to try and define these high-grade shoots, which add even more pounds to the zone. So that's going to happen. Obviously it's dependent on what we, if we can define them and what they're, right? Because it's you have to, Sam says it, you can create a bias by how you drill something. And so in a way, we may have missed the plunging shoots by how we were drilling it. So, if we can find them and define them, then they keep adding pounds, significant pounds, then we'll keep at it. But I guess 15 holes.
Okay. And, adding pounds, you did mention resource estimate in your talk. Do you have a timing on when you might like to complete an estimate?
Well, I'd say once we've satisfied ourselves about the idea with these plunging shoots, and if we can and define those, then I'd say we're there, right? That we've got the right kind of spacing to be able to end up with an indicated resource. And so, I would see that conceivably by the end of this year, we're there. Like those 15 holes will be drilled, certainly a combination of this winter and summer, because we're trying to tackle three things at the same time: defining those shoots, and the drills going back and forth, right? So we go back and forth, defining those. So by the end of the year, I think we'll definitely be there. In the meantime, we'll be exploring both on the new trend and at A1B1. I'd say the new trend first, so that we can get more geochemistry to guide us. There you go. I'd see that being, at the end of the year.
Okay. So almost all of your uranium mineralization right now is found in the basement rocks. Do you anticipate much or any uranium at the sandstone or unconformity interface at a JR zone, or how about a long trend?
Look, we certainly were looking for that possibility, okay? When the lens we found was so close to the unconformity, in some places it's 7 meters only below the sandstone. So very close. Some holes actually targeted to see if there was any high grade above the lens in the sandstone or lower sandstone. So we always keep that in our minds. And where we see, especially down at B1. So at JR, I'd say the likelihood, it's at JR's own lens itself, the likelihood for mineralization in the sandstone is very low from the drilling we've done. Mm-hmm. Down at B1, there's a lot more sandstone. So it's helpful to guide us, because the sandstone, it helps us to understand what might be below. Down there we certainly see all kinds of alteration in the sandstone, dissolution of the sandstone, all kinds of clay alteration in the sandstone. So the fluids were clearly also flowing through the sandstone. The potential is there for there to be mineralization in the sandstone. We keep it in our minds. We look at all the geochemistry and all of the data that we have, the geophysics. We look for resistivity, geophysical anomalies that might indicate perched uranium. And we're cognizant that is a clear target, and we keep it in our mind. Will it be there or not? I can't answer that. We won't know, but certainly we're on the lookout for that possibility.
Right.
Yeah, and again, also for the next lens we find down there may not be close to the basement the way the JR zone lens is. It could be much deeper in the basement. It could be up in the sandstone, as you say. We know that from our work at RRR. The separate zones at RRR are at different depths in the basement, and some plunge, some are flat lying. So we keep all that in mind, and we just let the data that we collect, and we collect a lot of data, and sift through that all the time. Geochemistry, the work structural data that we collect on the core, we let all that guide us, and try not to presume what it will be, but let the data speak to us. And I think that's another key, is to not know what you're going to find, but to just look at all of the data and let it guide and target us.
Yeah, so sandstone, basement rocks, obviously that B1 zone area is showing exceptionally intense alteration, structural deformation. Is that good news or bad news? Uranium deposits are often messed up, but I think it's posing a challenge trying to find uranium, since everything is just so heavily altered.
Well, in a way, David, I think it's not that. I think it's that normally the alteration along one of these systems is restricted to one structure that's fairly tight on each side of the structure. And so then the targets, if you want, are more defined. Because you got to go out, you don't know at what depth it's going to be in the basement, but the target across strike is narrow. So it has a long strike length, but it's narrow. In a way, what you described is correct. Down at B1, we have alteration and sniffs of uranium and radioactivity and all this, anomalous geochemistry over a width of 400 meters. So in a way, that does make it harder. Okay, it's harder then to narrow in on it. But to me, from my experience, seeing that much alteration over that wide and long strike length and width, to me, it just says there's something big there. That's to me, because all the other signs are there. Boron is a clear pathfinder. It's, uranium, high-grade uranium in the Athabasca is associated with boron. And we're seeing incredibly elevated boron. Background is, and the lower sandstone is, 300 ppm. Here we're looking at 10,000 parts per million. It's highly anomalous. And all the dravite clay that we see it visually. These are things that are just normally in close proximity to high grade. Yeah, it's maybe why it's been harder to narrow in on it, because it's over a greater width. But to me, it's maybe harder to find. But to me, it speaks to the potential for something big. But it'll only, I don't know what, we can only find what's there.